Hello and welcome back to another episode of Menstrual Mondays, where we talk about all things making a better world to bleed in. So that means how we can take care of our physical bleeding bodies. It means how we can relate differently to the emotional cycle and ease some of our symptoms, perhaps. And it also means looking at what is the world like currently that we bleed in and how could it be better? I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I can't remember the name of the podcast because it's the first time I've ever listened to it. I'm going to link it below because otherwise that's so rude of me. But it was about the future. And the lovely podcaster was talking about how in order to create a new future, we need to create a sense of longing for that future in people. And I was so inspired by this because I feel like a better world to bleed in is such a utopian kind of investigation or a utopian invitation. So today I want to switch gears a little bit from my previous videos, which have been more on the physical side of things, to talk a little bit about the cultural side of things. So like and subscribe, as they say, give me a comment, and most importantly, share this video with someone who you might like to talk about this topic with as a conversation starter, perhaps, because it really helps to feel like I'm not talking into a void, so do consider it. Today I want to talk about menstrual denial. I've written a blog post to accompany this video, and rather than that post saying everything that I'm going to say in this video, I encourage you to maybe read through that post, because what I want to talk about in the video is perhaps building on that blog post, or slightly, well, who knows? I don't even know what I'm going to say in this video. So what I'm saying is that I love to write, and I think that when we read and when we write, we absorb and are able to think about things in different ways. So I really encourage you to read that post if you feel called. So you might have heard of the idea of menstrual shame. That is, of course, rife within our culture. But what does it mean to deny menstruation? So my theory is that menstrual denial is a huge part of the suffering that many of us are experiencing today with the experience of our menstrual cycle. I first heard of this term through Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo Wurlitzer of Red School. And they speak about how our whole society is geared towards menstrual denial, and our symptoms have a way of interrupting the status quo. So what is menstrual denial and how does it manifest? Please tell me in the comments what it means to you when you hear that. But to me, it is this cultural gaslighting, and I'm talking about kind of over culture. There are, of course, differences between cultures and traditions, and differences within pockets of communities and families, of course. But the overarching paradigm, the over culture that we exist in, this cultural gaslighting, which has us believe a few things: that menstruation is obsolete, meaning that we don't actually need to menstruate. There's no physiological reason to menstruate unless we want to have children. And that can be seen most explicitly through the pill, which suppresses menstruation so that you don't get pregnant. That is a medical underlining of periods have no point. So there's that gaslighting of saying that menstruation isn't important. There's the oversimplifying of what menstruation is. So it's just a physical process, the shedding of the uterus, and there is a whole ignorance or denial of the side of menstruation and the side of cyclicality that is in fact a very deep psychological, spiritual process happening. And thirdly, there's this kind of feminist idea that male and female biology is pretty much the same, and in air quotes, anything you can do, I can do bleeding. So there is a denial of the need to rest during menstruation. There's a denial of the importance of treating oneself differently during menstruation, not only for your health, but actually in order to be able to access altered states of consciousness, which provide visioning and clarity on one's life. And that can be so valuable, not only for the individual, but for the individual's community. One of my teachers, Usha Nandi, she told a story once of how when she was about to undertake a plant medicine ceremony, and the shaman told her that she wasn't allowed to be part of it because she was on the first day of her period. So initially I was like outraged, how dare she be excluded because of being on her period. But she actually spoke about this as being a real moment of empowerment and realization that the menstruating woman was understood to be accessing such altered states of consciousness that are actually similar to that of a shaman. And so in this particular situation with that plant medicine facilitator, he didn't want her to be there because her ability to connect with this altered world was actually going to be interfering with his work. Traditionally, all shamans were women because they had that access to those visioning, prophecy-like states where they could actually deeply connect into their inner wisdom and higher guidance for the best of the entire community. So when I hear this and I really sit with that reality, it really makes me feel a deep sense of loss of what we should have, not necessarily that I'm saying we should all be communing with the spirits and shamans during our menstruation, but this dignity that is afforded to affirming what we know, which is that there is a deep significance and value of menstruation that is way beyond the production of children. It is a deep psychological process. The whole cycle is a maturation, development of the psyche process. It grows us, it matures us, not only physically in the cells of our bodies, but actually in our psyche. So this denial of cyclicity, this denial of the power and the value of menstruation, how this shows up in our menstrual cycle, in our life, is this building of tension and this building of stress, of hormonal imbalance, oftentimes a deep soul outrage that we have been gaslit for all this time. And the cultural denial, adds this layer of confusion into why do I feel this way? And the way that manifests throughout the whole of our cycle can especially be felt in our luteal phase, where, imagine that we had this menstrual cycle awareness. It wasn't just us individuals holding it, it was held by society, culture at large. This awareness that, okay, I'm traveling, I'm moving into this menstrual phase where I'm going to go and seek nuggets of wisdom for both myself and for my wider community. And I'm going to be able to rest deeply. I'm going to be able to reset. and I'm going to be held and supported. Imagine that reality versus a reality where the tension of the premenstrual phase is building and building, and we know that our period is coming, but we approach our period with fear, perhaps because we experience pain, or we approach it with apprehension that we know it's going to be a burden. We know maybe we're going to want to rest, but are we going to be able to rest because we're plowing straight into menstruation without slowing down, perhaps in the luteal phase? It's almost like the whole body, the psyche is like screaming out that it needs to be recognized, something's got to shift, something's got to give. And you can see how much that adds to the premenstrual tension, those premenstrual symptoms, because there is just this deep knowing that there is a lack of dignity in menstruation. So what is the answer? Well, it lies within each of us, and everything that we do to become more aware of our cycle, tuned in with our different phases, approaching menstruation, affirming, acknowledging, is a step towards undoing this cultural gaslighting. And the more that we can talk about it with one another and move through that confusion and that disconnection which is caused, and connect with one another about, I also feel this profound sense of loss, and I don't know why, and maybe it's because of this, and there doesn't have to be an answer, but I think we're all definitely doing it the more that we talk to one another about the menstrual cycle and acknowledge our feelings of sadness and grief, and imagine a better world in which to bleed. And I wonder if there's anything that you do, any rituals which help you to affirm your cyclicity, affirm menstruation. And please do go and have a read of the blog, see if there's anything else there which sparks imagination and longing for you. And that is it for today. Much love. I'll see you in the next video.